What's up, everybody? This is Albert, pronouns he, him, his, and we are back with the third and I anticipate the final part of going through Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. Um, I This is another part of the Raising Souls project, and I just want to hopefully we get through everything that's going on in this section of Parable of the Sower. So, where we left off from Parable of the Sower was that there were a lot of fires that were going on at the end of 2026. Um, Lauren's father mysteriously disappeared, and he'd been disappearing for so long that people had decided to take up the responsibilities that he was handling for the community. And now the we're on the year of 2027, and there is an earth seed quote that Lauren put that said, "We are earth seed. We are flesh, self-aware, questing, problem-solving flesh. We are that aspect of earth life best able to shape God knowingly. We are earth life maturing, earth life preparing to fall away from the parent world. We are earth life preparing to take root in new ground, earth life fulfilling its purpose, its promise, its destiny." So this is like a proclamation of the community that she really wants to create if she has her ideal world in her imagination. And now we're on Saturday, July 31st, 2027, and this is the morning time, and it documented like the aftermath of another series of fires that were going on in Robledo, in California. There were a lot more fires, there were so many fires that eventually led people to evacuate, which is kind of similar to what was going on in Altadena, and those areas in California where there were a lot of wildfires happening. And Lauren was separated from her family, her stepmother Corey, and the rest of her brothers. So she had to fend for herself and look for her own safety because they were separated. And the fires were going on for so long that she ended up having to sleep outside, and had to get away from the neighborhood because there were so many fires going on. And then that evening, Lauren returned home, and there were some thieves that were at there, and they were scavenging the house looking for any materials, and then they left by the time Lauren uh, was returned home. And then she witnessed a lot of people that have not survived those fires, notably Richard Moss, Robin Balter, Russell Dory, and she called these I think she called the corpses painted faces, um, because there were people that are no longer here, but you can still remember their faces, and now they're no longer in the earth. They're spirits and going and passed away. Um, and once she was still going around the neighborhood seeing who's alive. She was looking for her family to make sure they're okay and see if they survive. So, because they separated, so we're trying to see what's the status of them. So, when she was realizing that the community is probably like no longer good enough to actually live on, there are city members that were evacuating and trying to find shelter elsewhere. So they gather people together and try to find where do we go from here, and try to figure out what else to do. Since they lost their homes, they lost their prized possessions, and they lost their families and everything. And when she was with these group of people, she encountered Harry Balter and Zara Moss, who are going to be very prevalent in from now on in this story. Um, Harry just learned about his family's death, and Zara, who was one of Richard Moss's wives, he was in a polygamous marriage, and Zara confessed that she saw Corey and Lauren's brothers murdered while she was being sexually assaulted. And Lauren and Zara, um, once they got to introduce each other and talk to each other, and Harry got the news about his family, Harry started to grieve. Like, he started to get emotional and stuff like that. Like, it's I'm interested. Found it interesting how Lauren and Zara are the ones that are like, okay, we need to actually start caring about us now. But Harry is the one that's taking a moment. So it's like, oh wow, the female characters, the women, the girls, they are the ones that aren't processing, taking the time to pause, even though I understand, like, they're in survival mode. Like, they had to be fast with what they're thinking and just had to focus on what's going on now. But Harry is the one that's taking the man that is actually being emotional. So I found that to be interesting. Um, and then Zara got to share more about what had happened to her and what happened to Lauren's family. Zara recounted thieves harassing her, and Lauren's family were at the Hasu house. And Lauren told Zara that she saw her husband Richard died. And now it's like, where do we go from here? So Lauren, Zara, and Harry were planning how to survive. And Lauren said she got some maps that she can use that are still sufficient to use. And Zara is known to be someone who steals, and she's willing to do what it takes to survive. And then Harry, I will say that Harry is white, so of course there's the privileged white person that has some money that he can use so they can get some supplies and survive and gear and stuff and whatnot. Um, so now it is Monday, August 2nd, and I think Lauren was sharing a lot of survival lessons that she was giving. She was talking about how you need to rest every time you're walking a significant, because walking takes time. We can make cold camps. She talked about what causes wildfires, what is the difference between a campfire and a wildfire, and it depends on the dryness in the air. And it's kind of like talk about the metaphor of fire, and fire can be used for good and fire can be used for evil. You can use fire to like cook food or try to keep yourself warm, keep yourself comfort. So that's like the camp. So she's talking about campfires and stuff like that. And wildfires are the ones that are causing destruction that was going on in Robledo and other parts of California. Um, and she was talking about the random company that was stopping by, because a lot of the people in the town, they were just seeing who else they can trust to possibly go around and seek out shelter with. Um, and they were and was it Lauren that was talking about paranoia? This was on page 215, which I found interesting, about being in a being in an anxious state when you really don't know where you're going from here, and just being scared, because fear is, if you're in this situation, I will understand the fear of this. um yes, and on page 15, it says here, it's crazy to live this way, suspecting helpless old people. Insane, but we need our paranoia to keep us alive. Hell, Harry wanted to let the old guy sit with us. It took Zara and me together to let him know that wasn't going to happen. Harry and I have been well fed and protected all our lives. We're strong and healthy and better educated than most people our age, but we're stupid out here. We want to trust people. I fight against the impulse. Harry hasn't learned to do that yet. We argued about it afterward, low voiced and almost whispering. So it pretty much talked about the dynamics of the group because Harry, he's the white person I would say the liberal white person that tries to, sometimes he feels like he has a moral authority on some things when it's like we're in a position where we're in a disordered state, so we can't really care about following everything by the book because everything is gone. We need to do what we need to do to survive, and that was the challenge in the group. And Harry was trying to invite someone who they do not know into the group, and it is also talking about trusting people to share space with you because some people can take advantage of you. And we're talking about an old man, and these are a group of young kids. Well, not young adults because Zara. I'm trying to remember how old she was, but I think she's the oldest of the group. Um, and Lauren, she was 17 or 18 by this time. And Harry, I think he's older than Lauren, but younger than Zara. And what's interesting is that Lauren was pretty much taking more of the leadership role. So and because she was like determined, like she was the fires and all that stuff. This was stuff that she was prepared for, and I find something very powerful about how much she was like ready for an apocalypse, pretty much an apocalypse to happen. Like, I think you can learn something about being so solution focused to the point where people might find you to act weird, like how she was with Joanne. But this was literally what Lauren has. She was like prophesizing everything. Like she was talking to Joanne about it. She was preaching to the people at her father's quote unquote funeral about bad things are going to be happening and we need to prepare and actually do what we need to do to address it. So it was very necessary that she pretty much like was ready for it. She was very proactive in being in this situation. Because who would think, you would not know, like, next year, like, the people in California, like, they didn't know that all this destruction was going to happen the week before the fires happened. And Lauren was, like, ready. Um, and there's, like, I feel like this is, like, also, like, a community-centered activist, organizer approach to things. You really have to look at things in a solution lens, like focus on solutions and not trying to worry so much about the problems that it really like messes with you. Like I think about what Miriam Kaba said, let this radicalize you and not lead you to despair, which my people will find out very challenging, but you really have to be just focused on your local community. Like I've read a lot of video essays about parallel to Sower, and people were talking about how there weren't we're only focused on Robledo and California and everything that's going on in this community. We're not even talking about what's going on in other states in the United States. Like, yeah, there's a mention of a presidential election in this, but it shows like how much we can't just rely on the higher ups to solve the issues for us. We really have to go through like a self determination with ourselves and the community and the people that we're around. So I think that's a big takeaway that I got from the book. Um, And she was there on page 216. They were talking about the privilege of making mistakes. I'm trying to find it where they are. Yeah, this is another argument between Lauren, Zara, and Harry. Um, yeah, Lauren said here, you're strong and confident. You think you can take care of yourself out here, and maybe you can, but think what a stab wound or a broken bone would mean out there. Disablement, slow death from infection or starvation, no medical care, nothing. And then Harry said, "What then? Everyone's guilty until proven innocent." Guilty of what? And how do they prove themselves to you? And Zara said, "I don't give a piss whether they're innocent or not. Let them tend to their business." Harry, your mind is still back in the neighborhood. You still think a mistake is when your father yells at you or you break a finger or chip a tooth or something. Out here, a mistake, one mistake, and you may be dead. Remember that guy today? What if that happened to us? We had seen a man robbed. A chubby guy of 35 or 34 who was walking along eating nuts out of a paper bag. Not smart. A little kid of 12 or 13 snatched the nuts and ran off with them. While the victim was distracted by the little kid, two bigger kids tripped him, cut his pack straps, dragged the pack off of his back, and ran off with it. So, yeah, that's the reality of like being in a high intense survival mode state. Like, one mistake can cost you your life. So, it talks about when they had a family, they had a community, they had houses where they can is very convenient for them. Like, things were more convenient when they were doing those. Like, a mistake was like accidentally breaking a vase or not washing the dishes or something like that, where it's a mistake. But when you're out in the wilderness trying to survive, the the minute you make the wrong move can cost you your life. So that is another point. And then in 217, they were talking about the importance of and complexities of trust. Let me see if I can find it. Uh, yeah, Lauren says here, remember, we don't have to hurt anyone unless they push us into it, but we don't dare let our guard down. We can't trust people. Harry shook his head. What if I thought that way when I pulled that guy off Zara? I held on to my temper. Harry, you know I don't mean we shouldn't trust or help each other. We know each other. We made a commitment to travel together. Harry said, I'm not sure we do know each other. Then Lauren said, I am, and we can't afford your denial. You can't afford it. Harry Harry just stared at me. Lauren said, out here, you adapt to your surroundings or you get killed. That's obvious. Now he did look at me as though I were a stranger. I looked back, hoping I knew him as well as I thought I did. He had a brain and he had courage. He just didn't want to change. So it pretty much tells you that Harry was still in the mindset of like, this isn't real. Like, things are gonna get back to normal. And then Lauren had to snap him out of it. It's like, home is gone. We need to find another home because things aren't livable right here. This is literally, we literally have to force ourselves to get to a place where we can readjust and actually live. Um, yeah, he was very contentious and with Lauren about trust. And another fascinating thing about this is that I think Zara is the only person in the group. I think she was the oldest, but she's the only person in the group, these three, that doesn't know how to read and write because she didn't. I don't even think she didn't even get to high school or something like that. Um, and she was asking Lauren how to read and write, which I think that was beautiful. I really like the relationship between Zara and Lauren. And Lauren was also talking about, I think she was talking about Earthseed a little bit because she writes Earthseed verses in her journal. Um, and then on page 22 there was a quote that I found interesting. Yes, Lauren said, no one could have been ready for this, but I thought something would happen someday. I didn't know how bad it would be or when it would come, but everything was getting worse. The climate, the economy, crime, drugs, you know. I didn't believe we would be allowed to sit behind our walls, looking clean and fat and rich to the hungry, thirsty, homeless, jobless, filthy people outside. So yeah, like I said, like when no one was prepared when COVID-19 happened. No one was prepared for disasters, natural disasters, or something like that. Um, yeah, no one really thinks like so much bad was gonna happen that they have to really readjust to function. Um, and they have to really accept that things are the way they were, and they shouldn't, and they really shouldn't have to. Um, and then there was an intruder that came in to intrude the group. Lauren threw a boulder, and the intruder was fighting Harry for a gun. And then, yeah, I think the boulder hit the intruder, and the intruder wasn't conscious. And Lauren and Harry were debating whether to kill the person because they were like, this person could steal, but we also have an advantage. We can steal and rob things from him. Um, it makes me think about Keith and what he had to do to live on his own. He was potentially killing somebody and he robbed them. So this is literally the same scenario that Lauren is pretty much going through, and just in a different set of conditions. Um, and I think Lauren ended up killing him, slashed him with a knife. They stripped the bodies for money and snacks, and Lauren got to talk about her hyperempathy on page 230. Um, yeah, Lauren said here she was talking about her hyperempathy and pretty much how does she had to live with it. And she said, I had to learn to pretend to be normal. My father kept trying to convince me that I was normal. He was wrong about that, but I'm glad he taught me the way he did. And I think Zara said, maybe you are normal. I mean, if the pain isn't real, then maybe. Then Lauren said, maybe this sharing thing is all in my head. Of course it is, and I can't get that out. Believe me, I love to. Yeah, she pretty much gave her backstory about how her household was, considering Lauren's father was a notable member in the community, and pretty much talk about all the things they had to go through. Like she talked about Keith. She talked about how she had to grow up and be practically be a third parent because she was the oldest child. Her family dynamics and stuff like that. How her relationship with Corey. So she was, even though she didn't really like grieve, she was like she had a moment where she could be vulnerable and actually share her experience with people and try to connect with a person who sees her for her. Um, and that was it for that for that date. Um, the next date was Tuesday, August 3rd, 2027, and then Lauren was talking to Zara about Earthseed. Now she's talking to Harry about Earthseed, and then Harry was more interrogative about Earthseed. He was more into like, why do you believe in this stuff? It makes me think about how some Christians really think that they're the only religion that really matters in the world, and there's not like 50,000 other religions where people practice similar to them, but they subscribe to a different set of rules and principles and stuff like that. So Harry was more nonchalant about it, and Lauren didn't really like. She didn't really like care. It's like I don't need your validation for anything. So it's up to you on what you how you feel. But it's important. It's something that's important to me and allows me to move and navigate the world. Um, And then just like with the community in Robledo, where they had night watches and stuff like that, Lauren was like taking a lot of things that she learned while what they had to do during the night watch patrols in Robledo, like protect the gardens, protect everybody's families and stuff like that. She started to implement like a routine with the group, and it's like one night Lauren patrols, another night Harry patrols, another night Zara patrols, and then there was one time where I think it was Zara that was supposed to be patrolling. And Zara and Harry, they had developed some romantic feelings toward each other. And they ended up having sex while they were on the scheduled night watch. And Lauren definitely heard. Heard it. It was during the nighttime and they were asleep, but Lauren definitely heard what was going on when they were having sex. Um, Then the following day, they ended up saving a family from water thieves, and Lauren confronted Zara about the sex that she had with Harry previous night. So Lauren was like, "Okay, we need to do something about this. Y'all can do what y'all do, but we need to actually do something to accommodate that. All of us need to be watching. We need to be watching each other, protect each other. It's like you could have your sex, but you had a job to do." um, and then the next day, they stopped near the Pacific Ocean, and people were using the water to wash their clothes and bathe. Harry was using it to bathe, of course, because I'm like, this is an ocean. um, and then other people joined. And then Lauren was like, I think I know where to find better water. She actually like dug through some sand, and she found some water that you can actually drink. Um, like Lauren is actually interesting. Like she is so young, but she's so useful, resourceful. She was make something out of nothing. Like it's really impressive. Um, and then Lauren invited this family to join the group, and then it's a husband and a wife, and I have to remember, was it a 3 month old? So it's a baby that was with the family. So it makes me think like, wow, Lauren was because Lauren was like, y'all having babies, and but we have an apocalypse coming. Why? So it's like here we are with a family that's struggling how to make ends meet while they have a baby, and Lauren said hi and to the family, but the husband, the father of the child was like, "Who are you? You don't need to talk to me." And I'm like, I'm thinking like we're in a constant state of disarray where everybody. It'll be nice to like talk to somebody, so we know we're not alone and can actually help each other. So it's interesting how that was the initial reactions from the husband. Then the following day, there were some dogs that showed up because took place at a beach. There were some violent dogs that were trying to attack people in the beach. And then Lauren saved the family from the dogs because she had a gun. Like it makes it really like she was prepared for this. She had a gun, and her dad taught her how to use a gun. Um, so the family's name, the husband's name is Travis, and the wife's name is Natividad. I think that's how you pronounce her name. And Natividad was very thankful to Lauren about protecting them from the dogs. And then she got to know the group. Travis was still hesitant because men, they aren't warm. Sometimes they're not warm to a person, especially when they're getting help from somebody. So it made me think about toxic masculinity. But he eventually got in. And then Lauren, yeah, when TV Dad was getting to know the group and got to know Lauren, Lauren introduced Natividad to earthseed. And apparently that prompt, and then a couple days, and then they started traveling together. And then eventually, Travis, the husband, he eventually got to warm up to the crew and actually talked to Lauren about Earthseed. And I think, especially him, he also was like, "Oh, this is something that you believe in. Oh, okay, you do you." It's on page 258. Yeah, Travis said, "So, what did you analyze to get Earthseed?" Then Lauren said, "Other people, myself, everything I could read, hear, see, all the history I could learn. My father was a minister and a teacher. My stepmother ran a neighborhood school. I had a chance to see a lot." Then Travis said, "What did your father think of your idea of God?" Then Lauren said, "He never knew." And Travis said, "You never had the guts to tell him." I shrugged. Lauren said, "He's one person in the world I worked hard not to hurt." And he said, "Dead?" She said, and no, said, "She taught you about entropy?" And then Travis said, "She taught me to read and write. Then she taught me to teach myself." Talk about my TV dad. "The man she worked for had a library, a whole big room full of books." And Lauren asked, "He let you read them?" And Travis said, "He didn't let me near them. I read them anyway. My mother would sneak them to me." So Travis had this love of books, so that's something that him and Lauren got in common with. Um, so he was able to be open up to them about his backstory. He revealed that just like his mom was like sneaking books to him, not TV dad snuck books to Travis at a library that she worked. And then now TV dad had to leave the library due to sexual harassment from the boss, and that prompted them to leave the city. Like it's like with the fires on top of that, it's like, yeah, they had to go. So they feel like they had to pretty much have a new start in life together. Then, yeah, Travis and Lauren were discussing religion and entropy on page 260 to 261. Yeah, she said, "I still can't see change or entropy as God." And Lauren said, "Then show me a more pervasive power than change. It isn't just entropy. God is more complex than that. Human behavior alone should teach you that much. And there's still more complexity than you're dealing with several things at once, as you always are. There are all kinds of changes in the universe." And Travis said, "Then you're supposed to do what? Read a poem?" And then Lauren said, "Or remember a truth or comfort or a reminder to action. People do that all the time. They reach back to the Bible, the Talmud, the Quran, or some other religious book that helps them deal with the frightening changes that happen in life." Then Travis said, "Change does scare most people." Then Lauren said, "I know. God is frightening. Best to learn to cope." And then Travis said, "Your stuff isn't very comforting." And Lauren said, "It is after a while. I'm still growing into it myself. God isn't good or evil, doesn't favor you or hate you, and yet God is better partnered than fought." "Your God doesn't care about you at all," Travis said. "All the more reason to care for myself and others. All the more reason to create Earthseed communities and shape God together. God is trickster, teacher, chaos, clay. We decide which aspect we embrace and how to deal with others." Travis said, "Is that what you want to do? Set up Earthseed communities?" Lauren said, "Yes." And Travis said, "And then what?" And Lauren said, "There it was, the opening. I swallowed and turned a little so that I could see the burned over area. It was so damn ugly. Hard to think anyone had done that on purpose." "And then what?" Travis insisted. "A God like yours wouldn't have a heaven for people to hope for, so what is there?" So we get into um, challenging religion and challenging people's ideas and perceptions of what God is and stuff like that, which, yeah, that's real. Especially when you're like you got through an apocalypse and stuff like that. It's like, where's God right there? And that can be frustrating. and people do what they want to do on it with that. Like it's up to those people or how they navigate through life. And Lauren still chooses to see God the way she sees him, and Travis is like he's more into you could tell like organized religion has like done nothing for him. Um, and then this was August 15th. Zara and Natividad got to build a connection and express their love for community. And on 262 to 263, Lauren said, "I've come to think that I should be fishing that river even as I follow its current. I should watch people not only to spot those who might be dangerous to us, but to find those few like Travis and our TV dad who would join us and be welcome. Because they understand. It's like we got three people and a family with a baby. So it will really be helpful to get more people involved." Then Lauren said, "And then what? Find a place to squat and take over? Act as a kind of gang? No, not quite a gang. We aren't gang types. I don't want gang types with their need to dominate, rob, and terrorize. And yet we might have to dominate. We might have to rob to survive and even terrorize to scare off or kill enemies. We have to be very careful how we allow our needs to shape us. But we must have arable land, a dependable water supply, and enough freedom from attack to let us establish ourselves and grow. It might be possible to find such an isolated place along the coast and make a deal with the inhabitants. If there were a few more of us and if we were better armed, we might provide security in exchange for living room. We might also provide education plus reading and writing services to adult illiterates. There might be a market for that kind of thing. So many people, children and adults, are illiterate these days. We might be able to do it. Grow our own food, grow ourselves and our neighbors into something brand new, into earth seed." And it made me think about there was like a recent report on the literary crisis in the United States. And I can say, yeah, the literacy is like declining because the way education has been structured in the United States does not empower and motivate people and motivate kids to actually want to read and write and actually find usefulness in it. But yeah, it's pretty much the same thing going on in this book. Like Octavia Butler, like I said, predicted a lot of things very well because she was following the patterns. Um, then it was like 12 days after that, on August 27th, there was an earthquake that happened, and there was at the same time there was a farmhouse that was ended up burning. I think from the earthquake, and there were two women that were in the fire in the rubble of the fire. They were trapped with near the chimney. And this is where we also get to meet Bankoli. I think that's how you pronounce his name. We the two women that were in the barn that were in the farmhouse. Their name is Alice, Allie, and Jill. And when they were trying to save the Allie and Jill, there was a dead weight man. There was a man that they were using a dead weight that landed on Lauren, and I think Big Holy had to save her. So this is how we got more people in the crew. Um, and then they were talking about they were pretty much getting to know each other, and they were talking about how all these corpses, there were more corpses that were around in the area due to a lot of the fires and the tragedies that were going on, and they were calling them strip corpses. And there was I found it interesting, there was a radio earring, so it made me think about AirPods. Like, are we going to go into radio earrings? So I found that how interesting the technology that will Octavia Butler is saying is going to happen is kind of similar to what's going on now. And this book was written back in the 90s. Um, and we got to learn about Allison and Julian. Both of them are prostitutes who are very critical of religion. When Lauren got to talk about herself and talk about Earthseed, Allie and Julian, they were like not really for religion. But they eventually joined a group because, of course, you saved mine. Y'all saved our lives. We might as well. We don't know where to go from here. So, and Lauren is such a leader and a resourceful person. Like, it makes it easier for people to trust her. Um, and then they reach Salinas, and then Bencoli convinced the group that they should buy a rifle through um by so they can hunt for food and practice self-defense, which is something that Lauren's father instilled in all the kids, like practice you all have a right to self-defense and defend yourself. um and then on the next day, Saturday, August 28th, they were talking about addicts on page 285 to 286. Yeah, Lauren says here, addicts are running wild, setting fires in areas that the earthquake didn't damage. Bands of the street poor proceed or follow them, grabbing whatever they can from stores and from the walled enclaves of the rich and what's left of the middle class. Yeah, in some places the rich are escaping by flying out in helicopters. This is so rich people activity. The bridges that are still intact, and most of them are guarded either by the police or by the gangs. Both groups are there to rob desperate, fleeing people of their weapons, money, food, and water at the least. The penalty for being too poor to be worth robbing is a beating, a rape, and or death. The National Guard has been activated to restore order, and I suppose it might. But I suspect that in the short term, it will only add to the chaos. What else could another group of well armed people do in such an insane situation? The thoughtful ones might take their guns and other equipment and vanish to help their families. Others might find themselves at war with their own people. They'll be confused and scared and dangerous. Of course, some will discover that they enjoy their new power, the power to make others submit, the power to take what they want: property, sex, life. Bad situation. The Bay Area will be a good place to avoid for a long time. So they're pretty much talking about the the atmosphere, the chaos of it all after everything that happened a couple months ago in July. And then there was a fire that happened in a truck. The truck exploded. Then they heard gunfire, and Bencoli disappeared something mysteriously. And Lauren and Harry went to try to find Bencoli. Um, Bencoli ended up rescuing an orphan 3-year-old and brought him to the group. And the 3-year-old's name is Justin Rohr. I think his mom he was holding his mom's hand when they left, because his mom eventually got killed when there were more thieves. And this is where Lauren and Bencoli started to fill each other. And I have a lot of thoughts about the relationship between Lauren and Bencoli, because Bencoli is a significantly older man. Um, like he's been married before. That's how old he is. Um, so I'm interested to like know like when Octavia, if like I would love to like ask Octavia Butler like the choice of like having a significantly older man and this 17 to 8 year old girl be in a relationship. So I'm interested in any discourse on any people's takes on that, because I was confused on those choices. Like I get they were in a chaotic nature. Like I'm not upset with any of the choices that Lauren has been doing, because she's been handling herself pretty well. It's just been Coley. I'm like, we kind of like just met you, and here you are. So I have my is reservations the word about Ben Coley, about how my thoughts about him. Like Ben Coley, Harry, and yeah, a lot of the male characters, I have like a lot of thoughts about them. About well, it's like realistic because men is like men act the way they are, but for the sake of the narrative and the lessons we're supposed to be learning of Parable of the Sower, I find it interesting points to discuss. Um, then they reach the San Luis Reservoir, and they were talking about water purification, and then talk about Earthseed kept Lauren going, and it allowed her to bond with Bencoli. So yeah, Bencoli lost his wife 5 years ago during a robbery, and he was waiting for ambulance. And I think about and his wife was like still alive, but she suffered a lot of wounds, but she died at the hospital. And Bencoli got to talk about a lot of the community care he received after the passing of his wife. A lot of family brought him food, got to help because he was really depressed and stuff like that. They were able to help him take care and maintain the house. Um, and then Bencoli talked about planning to go somewhere north where his sister lives. I think it's in Canada. It's somewhere north. And yeah, Lauren said she thinks she knows where. And yeah, Bencoli is a doctor. So this is where we got to talk about. Bencoli asked about Lauren's age, and and then Lauren reminded Lauren, and for somehow Lauren reminded Lauren of Curtis, those same feelings that she had towards Curtis, and she was asking about Curtis. She was wondering if he's alive. So, and they were asking about the age. Interesting enough, Bencoli was the one that was had the hesitations. Lauren wasn't really as bothered, which it's like I understand because she's 18 and she's processing all these things. She doesn't really have to like time to really like adjust. Like an older man is kind of showing his attraction towards you. Um, so yeah, I had a lot of thoughts in the relationship, y'all. I gotta say that. um, So now, after that, August 31st, the group bonded over an Earthseed reading lesson. Let me see if I can remember what it was. Because Lauren was pretty much being like an English teacher to everyone because she was the main one that can read and write. Like she was the daughter of a professor. So I think that talk shows you a lot about political education and actually using the skills you have to share with your community and actually help them for their own personal gain. Um, yeah, I'm already almost done, y'all. Wow, didn't realize how fast I was going. Um, And Allie, yeah, during the Earthsea reading lesson, that's when Allie became more intrigued, and the same she was the same person that was like really interrogating the thoughts of religion or something like that. And I wouldn't say the way Lauren is going about it is like a religion per se. It goes in. I think it more goes into like the spiritual, not religious. Um, direction that a lot of people in right now is pretty much going through because they're not really feeling what's being preached in the pulpit of organized religion. So they decided to make their own ideas of what God is and what He can do, how can He help you, and how can you move through life with this strong belief and go through the world. And after that lesson, there were more gunfight noises. Like they're so used to just hearing guns ablazing at this point because there was so much violence, so much chaos, so much um, disasters that was going on around this time that they're just not that faded. They could just hear it as like, oh, somebody died. So that's like how common the violence has been at this point. Even though they were in Robledo, where it was common to like hear about all these robberies and violence and stuff like that, it's like okay, they're really like not faded by any of these things that were going on. And then It's been more than a week after that lesson. They were traveling on I-5. They saw a lot of corpses there, and they saw teenagers roasting a human leg. I'm like, oh my gosh. It's gotten to the point where people are committing cannibalism, and they're teenagers. That's how bad it's gotten. Um, yeah, Cape Munduno is where Bencoli's sisters live, and he what's interesting is that he like specifically talked to and invited Lauren about coming up there, and Lauren is like, why not we invite everybody else? And Bencoli was like, well, and this was where I like this relationship. I don't know about it. And then Bencoli and then Lauren and Bencoli were talking more about Earthseed, and Bencoli was like unimpressed with Lauren's desire for Earthseed because he just found it like such like a little girl dream that he's really not sold on like what it's can actually do to help him thrive. And then after that, the group spotted some more people that joined the crew. Emery Tanaka Solis and her daughter Tori, and there was another discussion on whether to trust them. And Emery was an indentured farmer and escaped a lot of gangs, so it made me thinking about sharecropping, a lot of the black farmers, and all the things that they had to go through to um, utilize resources and make profit out of their crops. And it was kind of like slavery. This indentured farmer is that's a slave, because someone is over profiting over your labor and stuff like that. They're exploiting your labor. Um, I think and Emery had two sons that are no longer with her. Um, and then on page 337, there was a quote section that stuck out to me. Um, yeah, said we take them both. Trying to find it. Yeah, let me read this section and see if I can find it. At our noon stop on Tuesday, Tori and Doe, the two little girls, went away from the group to urinate. Emery went with them. She had kind of taken charge of Doe as well as her own daughter. The night before, she and Grayson Mora had slipped away from the group and stayed away for over an hour. Harry and I were on watch and we saw them go. Now they were a couple, all over each other, but at arm's length from everyone else. Strange people. So Emery took the girls off to pee, not far away, just across the hill, facing out of sight behind a patch of dead bushes in tall, dry grass. The rest of us sat eating, drinking, and sweating in what shade we could get from a corpse of oak trees that looked only half dead. The trees had been robbed of a great number of branches, no doubt by people needing firewood. I was looking at their many jagged wounds when the screaming began. First, there were the high, needle thin, needle sharp shrieks of the little girls. Then we heard Emery shouting for help. Then we heard a man's voice cursing. I died with someone else. Someone laid hands on me, and I came with a finger's twitch of squeezing the trigger once more. Bencoli. Yeah. There was an ambush that happened, and Jill got killed, and Lauren was wounded. Um, and then they were talking about how Yeah, they have to leave Jill behind and care for Lauren now since Jill died. Um, and then they try to run from a massive fire, and the fire was like so big, like it's like as big as a city, um, that they were trying to run away from, and they eventually reached this area called Clear Lake, and Grayson Mora, another person that they met along the way, was upset about not watching with a gun because he doesn't know how to use it. So Grayson was like the one person in the group that doesn't know how to use a gun. Um, and then after about a week, they reached the land that Benkoli's sister was living in. And then the following day, there were skeletons that were there that were allegedly Benkoli's sisters and her children. So he lost his sister and his family, and this is and her family. So he just grieved another death. And then Lauren and Macaulay were arguing about calling the cops, and I'm like, y'all are at an apocalypse. Y'all, the disaster is happening. Like the cops are doing so much other stuff that don't even can't even pertain to you. Like it's even time. It's like time to call it quits on even thinking about that. And then that's when Lauren, she really took her Earth Seed philosophy seriously. They were building a residence in the area. Everyone in the group, they were preparing gardens. The team decided to make a decision on everything. If there was someone who's visiting, is that we got to go by the team to let them know is this some person we can invite or we can't roll with them. Um, and Grayson Mora was someone who was hesitant. And Grayson was a very character that just came in. So I'm curious to like what was the purpose of Grayson Mora to be in this story. I will say that they just came out of nowhere, kind of. Um, and then after that, they decided to do a burial for Benkoli's sister and her children. And Lauren Benkoli were having time to themselves outside, thinking about what can we do with this land. What are some other things Lauren had ideas for Earthseed? Um, and this is where I've been waiting for. They finally taking the time to grieve after all this time. So this is October 10th, 2027. Everything that happened as far as the fires and all that stuff, all that happened back in late July. So it's been almost almost it's been more than 3 months, like 3 months and a couple of weeks, where everyone was like on a fast go just to find safety, and you're finally processing all the pain and sadness from the deaths of your loved ones. So um all of this prompted Lauren to call the community Acorn, which, if y'all remember Ruha Benjamin's book, Imagination, I got a video on that. She was talking about someone at a program that Ruha visited. They named the program Acorn, and it was based off of this book, The Acorn. Um, because it makes it's kind of like the parable of the sower verse that's in the Bible is Luke chapter 8 verses 5 through 8, and I'm gonna get to the verse. Yes, a sower went out to sow his seed, and as he sowed, some fell by the wayside, and it was trodden down, and the fowls of the air devoured it. And some fell upon a rock, and as soon as it was sprung up, it withered away because it lacked moisture. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprang up with it and choked it. And other fell on good ground and sprang up and bare fruit in hundredfold. So this is the King James version of the book of Luke, chapter 8, verses 5 through 8. And I think it's pretty much telling how this story pretty much talks about this verse. And the verse is pretty much saying, like, all these seeds that are going, cause earth seed, a sower is someone who like grows seeds and stuff like that and grow and actually nourishes the plants and stuff like that so they can grow. Some of the seeds aren't gonna grow because there wasn't enough sunlight, enough moisture, enough things for it to develop. And that's kind of pretty much what's going on in the setting of a parable of the sower. Some people didn't make through the fires. Some people didn't make through the violence that was going on in Robledo. Some people weren't making it through the robberies. Someone didn't make through the all of these disasters that we're going through. But there were people that survived, and they did what they had to do to actually grow and look to each other for their own salvation. And that is Parable of the Sower. And I gotta say, I'm glad I finally got to this book after so many years of like hearing about it. And yeah, I will say, yeah, the ending, I was like, okay, it doesn't feel final because I know there's another book and it's a trilogy. It was originally going to be a trilogy. There's Parable of the Sower, there's Parable of the Talents, and then there was supposed to be another book that Octavia Butler was working on, but by the time she was drafting and all that stuff, she unfortunately passed away. So we really haven't gotten a final story. So it just felt like there's more to the story when I finish this book. But yeah, that is the Parable of the Sower. Thank y'all for going through these videos about the book. And yeah, feel free to drop any thoughts when y'all were reading Parable of the Sower, because many thoughts were coming around my head. Y'all know how I felt about some of these characters and some of the choices that they made. But I will say, Lauren, I am enamored by like how she was ready for all of this to happen, and she was able to succeed and accomplish her goal and make Earthseed. So it's like, oh wow, she really manifested it. Um, but it's so realistic, and like how people were like, you talk about there's something going on that's going to be, I have to learn how to grow this plant, that plant, and all that, but I'm good. I could just go to a restaurant or something like that. Next thing you know, disaster ensued, and here we are now. We got is each other. So yeah, that's Parable of the Sower. And thank y'all for staying through with these videos, and stay tuned for another video. I know y'all been waiting for another book because it took me a while to actually finish this book. Like, y'all need some time with Parable of the Sower because it's so much to digest, and I knew I needed to make more than 2 videos for it. But yeah, stay tuned for another video soon. And follow the Raisin Souls Instagram page. You'll find on the link on the description box below. And y'all, take care.